Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Racer. First of all, I'd like to thank some of my partners who have continued to support my racing in 2023. Both Rising Sun Hotel and Caspian Group have been partners since I was go-karting, and they followed me to superkarting and now Formula V. And I'm really grateful, that they continue to believe in me and support me, because without their help, I honestly could not do it. So, um, honestly, I wouldn't get the opportunity that I get in this sport without them. So I'm obviously very passionate about motorsport, and I can't thank them enough. So thank you, Rising Sun and Casabian Group. If you're looking to stay somewhere and have a good eat, go to Rising Sun Hotel Bendigo. And if you need any drainage or excavation needs, let the Casabian Group know. Thank you, guys, and enjoy this episode of Grassroots Racer. On to tonight's guest, who has been around performance race boats, rally cars, and what he does is he builds super fast engines. And he's pretty much done it his whole life. He's worked with teams like Perkins Engineering, Ford Performance Racing, and he's even worked overseas with ProDrive UK, working on their Le Mans LMP1 car, and all different types of stuff like that. Often the people behind the scenes in the race teams don't get talked about much, but in every winning team, there needs to be good mechanics, crew members, engineers, and engine builders who help the car and the driver go as fast as they can. So to find out more about this guy's motorsport journey, I welcome Brad Nankervis to the show. How are you tonight, Brad?
Good, thank you. Good to have. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. And for those who don't know, can you share a bit of your family history and what it was like growing up around boats and engines, being built your whole life?
I suppose it's one of those things I haven't been able to escape it. I spent my whole life around this sort of stuff. Like, it comes from my great uncle and my grandfather with their boat business that ultimately spent most of its life out at Lake Epilock, and where they built boats, engines, various things for racing, and sort of was always exposed to it, and I've always been around it. So
Yeah, and how old were you when you first started helping out?
probably, I don't know, probably from sort of age 12, I suppose, or maybe just hanging out, getting in the way. But it's probably more like from about 12, but probably more started doing like things that probably, of any note, probably like after 15, 16.
And what were you probably what sort of things were you doing? You know what I mean? When you say you got involved, what sort of things were you doing at that age?
A bit of everything, like clean, like everything from cleaning up, just helping out. Like, sometimes just an extra set of hands when you need more than one person to do a job. Cleaning parts. It's unfortunately 90% of engine building is cleaning parts, so you can't get away without doing that.
And I'm sure the guys at work would have really appreciated having someone else having to clean it instead of them.
Oh, definitely, definitely. You always give the young kid the hard jobs.
Hmm.
Chain them to the parts washer.
Yeah, and obviously, as you got a little bit older, did you get into the boats? Did you do some boat racing at all?
Yeah, I did. I did a fair bit of boat racing in the Oz Light 1.6 litre hydroplane class. I raced the family's boat Tiger Cub, which sort of everyone's had a go at racing, and raced that for quite a while. They run a little four-cylinder Toyota engine and speed sort of in the 90 miles per hour sort of range. And then over time, I built up my own boat.
Could you also tell us a little bit about the Tiger boats, because they do have a lot of history in your family?
Yeah, it sort of goes back a fair way. Started sort of with my great uncle Keith. He raced a boat called Tiger, which was the original Tiger, and he set the Australian water speed record in 1966 at 138 miles an hour.
Yeah.
He won a few events, and it's sort of like it was always a fair bit of the myths, the legend associated with the original Tiger boat, which my father still has today, and he's in the process of restoring it. And then from there's like a whole lot of other Tiger boats. There was Tiger 2, Tiger Cub, Little Tiger, and they've all been raced in various capacities over the years.
So if I'm correct in saying this, didn't you get a speed record? Your dad, Leo, um, Keith, and is that it?
No,
Am I right
I
saying
never
that?
got one myself. I've never got a speed record
Ah,
myself. Yeah, I'm the one missing out. the it's actually quite strange because there's the 100 miles per hour badge, and that's quite a thing in powerboat racing to get you 100 miles per hour badge. And my great uncle Keith, I think he was number 12 in Australia
right.
to get his 100-mile-an-hour badge. That was in the mid 60s,
And
and
was
and the funny thing is, my grandfather actually got his badge at nearly this record speed. But he claims my grandfather Alan, he claims he was only doing a test run just to get his badge, but turns out he went nearly as quick as the record speed.
and was
And then
that
my
all?
father Leo he was I think he was at one stage the youngest to get his
Yeah,
youngest person to get his 100-mile-an-hour badge at 17.
yeah, I believe. Yeah, he told me he was 17 years old, and he
Yeah,
was the
and his
youngest.
brother Paul's got one as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And then a little bit, I guess when you're a little bit older, when you're still in school, you left school and started studying mechanical engineering at uni.
yeah.
But then you decided it wasn't for you. Why did you prefer to start building, really fast engines instead?
I guess it was sort of like I decided at that point, like I sort of had a go at being going down the engineering path and sort of the academic studies that you need to do to become an engineering, and it's a very maths science sort of thing, and it sort of gets to the point where you're either that person or you're not. And after doing it for a while, I decided it probably wasn't for me. I sort of thought I'd probably better get back on the tools and sort of pursue a more hands-on aspect of it.
And some people do feel a bit different about it. Obviously you felt better hands-on. Um,
Mm.
was there any sort of real reason for that? Do you think that or did you enjoy it more, or was it more that you felt like you worked better on the tools?
Probably my strengths is on the tools, solving problems, that in front of me, um, and it's sort of like I think it was a big thing too. Like when I was at school back in the olden days, they that there was a real push to be for that academic side of things, and there wasn't such a push for trades. And
Mm,
it actually sort of reversed around a little bit. Like people like my younger brother Rowan, when he went to school, it was all about trades.
mm.
Whereas, when I went to school, it was all about academic sort of achievements. So that's so they pushed you towards university paths, or at least have a go at it.
Hmm.
So
But the thing is, you are older than Rowan, so it almost seems a little bit different that earlier they
yeah,
were encouraging school, and then later they were sort of convincing you
yeah.
trade's a better
I
option.
think it's one of those things goes around in cycles.
Hmm.
It's like maybe like a 10-year cycle. It changes.
Yeah. But you did end up working for some pretty big names like Perkins Engineering, Ford Performance Racing. What did you enjoy about your time there?
Probably in a lot of ways, the team environment. Like you work in a big team. It's almost like a sporting team, and it's like everyone has to work together to try
Mm.
and get the results on the track. And if you don't work together, it doesn't work that well. So it's all about the development of stuff too. Like particularly in engines, it's sort of like a never ending thing. It's not only power and torque and it's an efficiency. It's you're trying to get fuel economy down and to get fuel stops right and all that sort of stuff. And you always fine tuning stuff. It's a never ending field, and it's such a challenge because you got
I've
so many people
mm,
trying to do the same thing, and everyone's trying to beat each other.
yeah. Especially, I think Ford Performance Racing and HRT were always very close, so it would have been very hard to keep up with them and them to keep up with you. So there
Oh
was
yeah, and
definitely a lot of work.
Triple Eight,
And
Triple
Triple Eight,
Eight
yeah.
Engineering they really dominated during that period. So
Hmm.
they were like our arch nemesis.
I do have a question though. When you would go to Bathurst, would you run a different engine. So would you run one that maybe lasted a bit longer, or you just run the same one the whole year round?
Towards the end, you kept the same engine for the whole weekend generally. Sort of when I sort of left there, and like that's what they do today. They get huge mileage out of engines, so they would tend to run the same engine. But early on, definitely, you'd run one engine all week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday practice. If you got into the top 10, it was always a bit of a top 10 shootout. It was always, did you put the race engine in for the top 10 shootout, or did you do it Saturday night for the next day race? So generally you did run a different engine in the lead up to the race. And sometimes the engines were a bit better. For if you knew you were going to definitely change engines, you might have something up your sleeve for qualifying.
And you did do a fair few events. Do you remember anything from your first Bathurst 24-hour?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, a guy from Bendigo, David Stewart, he entered at the time it was a new BA GT Falcon, and it was a road car that we converted at British Sporting Cars, and it was the one and only 24-hour Bathurst event, and it was pretty exciting. I remember we operated out of the old Bathurst sheds. It was before they'd sort of revamped the place and built the current sort of pit garages. And I remember it was a big event. Like, there was a lot of international teams, and it was a big deal. And it was an eye opener.
Yeah, well, definitely. When you go to Bathurst, where they run lots of international classes, I think it, in a way, it'd be a little bit daunting that you've got like Mercedes from Germany. You know, Mercedes build very nice cars with German engineering. It's it's pretty hard to beat. So when the guys like Mercedes come, you do have a bit of a challenge. But, you know, you've also done heaps of work building engines for people like Paul Dumbrell, Alex Davison, and Steve Richards. Do you have any real standout memories from them times?
Probably the one thing, like we qualified on pole a few times for Bathurst. I think 2 years running for Stephen Richards and Paul Dumbrell, and also with Ford Performance Racing and Mark Winterbottom qualified on pole as well.
Oh, yeah. Do you have any like funny stories that you're allowed to share that happened one day that you'll never forget?
Not like I really think of.
Yeah.
Actually, probably another highlight was when I started at Ford Performance Racing. The first engine I built won Sandown.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jason Brighton, Mark Winterbottom in the Caterpillar car.
Was that for the Sandown 500?
Yeah, it was a 500 then.
Yeah, I really hope. I think they are bringing it back this year, but it'd be good to see it again, because it's pretty much the lead up to Bathurst. Sometimes it can be the co-driver warm up, where this year or last year they didn't really have that.
Exactly, and it is a good warm up, and it's a proper endurance race from the old calendar basically.
But as good as it would have been working for a race team like Ford Performance or Perkins, was it tiring, or was it fun traveling around to all the different race venues and working at them?
It was always fun, but it was tiring. Sort of taxing being away racing all the time, and also too, like it never really ends. Like, there's always some new challenge. There's always and the one thing I did find, particularly with supercar engine programs, is you have X amount of engines, and generally, if you've got a problem with one engine, 9 times out of 10, it's like with 15 of them. It's and then you've got to do something times 15 to fix it. And also too, when I first started, we were trying to get things like valve train technology was rapidly changing when I first started, and we were getting maybe 1,000, 1,200 kilometres out of an engine without doing a top end rebuild. And then that became 2,000. 3,000. I think even they got up to sort of 5,000 kilometres between rebuilds. It was massive technology change in that time. Just a lot happened in a short space of time that aided reliability, but also it was just the development of how things went along.
Yeah, definitely. It seems that technology has come a long way. But how much R&D would you sort of do in a year? Say you went to Sandown and you maybe notice, oh, the way the oil line runs from here to the cooler could be a bit better. Would you change that in between races, or is it something that you noted down for the next year?
No, they're like things that get changed between races, definitely. Like, especially if there was anything that was going to be an issue, particularly reliability wise, it would definitely, like, if it was going to cost you the chance of finishing the race, we'd definitely change it between races. But yeah, things like that were always changing, or there'd be a new problem would arrive, like something that had never happened before. All of a sudden, that's a problem. So just got to deal with it and make the best of it.
And how often after a race would the cars be, like after a weekend, how often would they be pulled all apart, assessed and put back together?
Nearly every time they went out. So basically, after every race weekend, they would literally go to pieces.
Right.
Unless there was like two races back to back close together, they might only have like a partial service. But yeah, most of the time they'd just be completely disassembled.
And how many guys would you have working on a car in the shop? I guess if they had to do a full service on it, pretty much check it all.
Pretty much it's like 2 car mechanics per car. Well, that's how it used to be anyway. And be 2 car mechanics, but then you'd have all your various departments. So the 2 car mechanics would primarily work on the car, hands-on on the car. But then there was all the other departments, like there's fabrication, machine shop, sub-assembly, engine shop, composites, bodywork, paint, and sort of everyone has to work together. So the car mechanics typically would disassemble a car after a race weekend. They always look more damaged back at the workshop, and stone chipped, like massively stone chipped. And then the cars get disassembled, and say, bodywork would get fixed however it needed to be fixed. They'd assess any damage. All sub-assembly components would come out and go to sub-assembly, and a lot of things might only just be for crack testing or inspection. But but then there'd be further things, like they might disassemble gearboxes. They might look at they'll be looking at the clutch wear, all that sort of stuff. And then we'd get the engines back. Typically, sometimes we'd service the engine in the car and leave it in, but most of the time the engine would come out, and you just check your valve train, bore scope the engine, look at all your filters, any potential leaks, problems, etc.
And an engine to pull out of a V8 supercar would be 10 times easier than a road car, wouldn't
it? Yeah, it depends on the road car, but it's not too bad. Generally not too bad.
Well, you could pretty much take the bonnet off with these, at least these days. It's probably a pin holding them on these days, but you could take the bonnet off and then you'd have clear space.
Yeah, yep.
And
also too, like they don't have a lot of one thing, they don't have a lot of emissions stuff or any of the road car stuff that is not purposeful on a race car to get in the way.
And I guess for us in Formula V, an oil change is probably good every 1 or 2 race weekends. How often would you change it every day? Like every day on the race weekend?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I generally go the whole race weekend on oil, unless there was a reason to change it.
Say a car got in the crash. How long would it take if you got it back to the shop, pulled it down to a chassis, and pretty much built a new car? How long could that normally take?
Oh, it sort of depends.
It
has happened before. Like they've massively crashed a car, and then there'd be a spare chassis in the workshop. Or even like when I wasn't traveling, we rode off a car at a race meeting, and quite a few of us went in on a Sunday, the day that it was crashed on the Saturday, so Sunday at lunchtime. And a few of us went in and started Sunday afternoon and started getting parts out, getting ready for the spare car. And then because I think we might have had to go straight to the New Zealand or the Grand Prix or something like that. It was close, so we'd we get a head start. So like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they build a new car essentially.
It'd be hard though.
It just depends on how many parts you've got and what you've got access to, and
but if
how
you
many
had
spares you've got.
if you had a big shunt on Saturday and you bent the chassis in New Zealand, would you try repair it for Sunday, or would you call it for that car?
You'd always try and repair it if you could, but it depends on how structurally the car's damaged. You can replace almost anything. When it comes to bending the roll cage, that's when you that's when it gets questionable as to whether you can actually fix it at a racetrack.
Oh, okay.
But anything else like in the older cars, like the Project Blueprint cars, like putting on front chassis rails has been done in a pit garage with limited tools and equipment, but a few skilled fabricators have managed to do it.
You would bring a fabricator to the track in the scenario that you had to do a quick repair.
A lot of the times, yeah, definitely.
But
they might have a secondary role for the race weekend as well.
Mm.
So they might be part of the pit crew or refueling or doing tyres. There's always lots of jobs like that at the racetrack.
But on a bit of a different note, how did you get into British sporting cars?
It all happened through a guy that actually worked. He actually did his apprenticeship. A guy that I know, Simon. He did his apprenticeship at Lake Eppalock, and I sort of always knew him. And he was sort of looking for someone to help out, and I was sort of between, sort of finishing what I was doing at uni, / looking for looking for the next thing to do, and it just sort of come about at the right time, right place.
What tracks did you race at?
We used to, most of the stuff we used to do at British Sporting Cars was generally, old British, like apart from say the Bathurst 24 hour, a lot of the stuff we did was sort of more classic British cars like MGBs, Minis, stuff like that. And be a lot of state series rounds at like Sandown, Winton, those sort of places. Probably, similar to sort of what you do with your Formula V.
How did the opportunity to work on an LMP1 car come about?
That was one of those things because I worked for Ford Performance Racing, or it's known now as Tickford. They were owned by ProDrive, which is one of the biggest motorsport companies in the UK. They're legendary for their rally program with Subaru and the World Endurance program with their Aston Martins. And because they were owned by them, it was sort of a bit of a crossover where for quite a period of time, every year someone got to go from Ford Performance Racing and go help out at Le Mans with the team there. So I was lucky enough to get to go one year.
It would have been very different over there, wouldn't it?
It was, yeah, it was different. It was really good. Like I got to go over there and work for, I think it was a week or two with the guys over there, and then we went across to Le Mans for the race. And it was interesting. It was an eye opener. Yeah. That's best thing to sleep at Le Mans.
Was that during the night or day?
Yeah, during the night.
Yeah.
I look pretty thrilled.
Were there any drivers in there who are quite known today?
Darren Turner.
Oh yeah.
He's a big one. Like he's big in world endurance stuff. Darren Turner, Sam Hancock. He does like world endurance stuff now too. I think he's big in historic stuff in the UK because they actually like those like classic Monaco and stuff like that. I think he runs in that sort of stuff. There was a few other guys I can't remember their names.
Darren Turner still races with Aston Martin today?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
runs with Uncle Dave Richards.
Oh yeah. But how different was it working in an environment overseas?
It was strange. It wasn't that much different. Like in a lot of ways, it was similar sort of stuff to what I'd sort of done before. It was on a much bigger scale though. Like we felt like we were running a petrol V12 against like the works Peugeot and Audi, which their diesel program, we were competing outright with the diesels, which they were never going to do, because they're the Audi and Peugeot program. So they were spending Formula One style money. And the Aston Martin program was great, but it wasn't on that sort of level. But I think Peugeot that year had run, they'd taken their 4 cars plus their spare car, complete with 4 drivers per car, and gone to like Paul Ricard and run their own 24-hour race.
Right.
Amongst themselves, with like full pit stops, full engineering, everything, like run their own race. And they'd done it something like 5 times that year. So like the cost involved in that would be like they'd probably take 100, 150 people to the track with them. Yeah,
back in Australia, you've also built engines for Rod Hadfield's, the bronze Aussie, the guy the bronze Aussie, which is compared on the Salt Lakes during Speed Week. That would have been pretty awesome. Can you tell me about the car?
Basically, it's been running in it's been running like in a 4-door production style class. So it's it's a VS Commodore, full, basically unaerodynamic assisted, as much as a streamline as a VR Commodore is. And we've managed to run. It's been running for 20 plus years.
Wow.
And my father's been involved in it for a long time as well. It's been since the early days. And our best speed to date is 271 miles an hour.
You're looking to break 3?
Yeah, 300 mile an hour is the goal, except it hasn't run for about 5 years because Lionel, the driver, had a little bit of an accident and crosswind got him. And he was doing about 270 miles an hour at the time, crosswind. He just changed into top gear, and we think crosswind got him. And then the car started to spin, and he normally it's happened a few times where he's sort of got a bit out of shape and he pulls the parachutes and it sort of straightens him up. But this time he spun and the parachutes came out while he was going backwards. So it went end over end, and made a big mess of it. So it's had a massive rebuild. And next month, the 20th to the 24th of March, it'll be running again.
Is there anywhere that it will be like streamed, or is it just you'll know about it if it happens?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'll be going to have a look at it anyway and help out. So it's except we're racing. Yeah, the Dry Lake Australia Facebook page is probably the best place to keep up to date with that sort of stuff. It's hard out there because there's not much coverage. No phones don't work. It's satellite phones only. It's such a remote location.
It'd be good to see like some sort of recording though, even if they recorded it and posted it later. That'd be pretty cool.
They definitely will. There are some videos around of it running for sure.
And is there any engines or projects that you're excited to be working on this year?
Got a new 6-litre engine to build for someone. The ski racing program. They're always like a pretty technological sort of engine for a push rod engine. Always trying to push the limits of valve train and reliability, and it's always building high horsepower naturally aspirated engines. It always seems to be the hardest way to make power, but also the most rewarding, I find. We also do a lot of boosted engines as well. A lot of twin turbo engines, a lot of supercharged engines. Supercharged street car engines. People love them. Make big noise. They make the right noise.
Especially teenagers.
Exactly.
But where can the viewers follow what you do on social media and what you do at work?
Yeah, well, basically we're Nankervis Performance Boats and Racing Engines Facebook page, and you can check us out on Instagram as well. And
I believe the Instagram page is new.
Yes, it is. So yeah, we're trying to get more followers for our Instagram page.
Well, 2 seconds for you guys to just hit the @ in the description, and it will take you to the Instagram, and you can hit the follow button. It takes 2 seconds, and you can keep following their progress.
Yeah.
But seriously, thanks for speaking to me tonight, Brad. It's been great hearing about all the cool things you've done in the past. And for anyone out there looking for, a high performance engine, some work on your boat, aeroflow parts, just general boat parts and some automotive parts, make sure you head down to Nankervis Performance Boats and Engines, and the team there will look after you. But if you're racing this weekend, dirt, bitumen, or even water, remember to drive fast and take chances safely, of course. Thanks, Brad.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So good.